Hey guys, welcome back. So real quick, make sure you check out my guy Trap B Rhyme Music over on Instagram, who I'm sure a lot of you already follow, but now he's also got a YouTube page. So if you haven't already, be sure to go over there and subscribe so you can catch him spitting more fire from the perspective of some of your favorite characters. And one of my personal favorites is the MK11 joint, so be sure to check that out. Alright, so taking a short break from the Avengers Endgame spoiler talk and getting back into more talk about the War of Realms, of which I want to make so many references to Game of Thrones, but everybody ain't seen Game of Thrones yet. And so just in case, I'm pretty sure I'm going to make some Game of Thrones references. In Avengers Endgame, not so much. Or Endgame, not at all. You can't say not so much in a spoiler warning, because you're like, is it or is it ain't? So no Endgame spoilers for this one. But if you're new here to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so let's break down a lot of this madness that has reached Midgard at this point. So now just picking up from what we talked about recently, with Malekith invading Midgard and doing so at a point in time when his allegiances were strong as possible, which is one of the reasons why it took so long, with resurrecting Laufey and waiting for Asgard to be weak enough to attack and securing the other realms by recruiting leaders from each one. So with his plan of saving Earth for last, he would already have the other 9 realms tilted in his favor. And previously on this playlist, we've talked about how that plan is panned out throughout the years to bring us to this point, but I also got to add on top of that Malekith was pretty smart at the point of not broadcasting it beyond the means of his current reach, because had he done that, then it would have taken away from his element of surprise, and as a result we would have had a lot more heroes who would have been prepared and ready for this invasion, because really and truly there was only a handful of heroes who were aware that this invasion was on the way. And for the record, just giving credit where it was due, a lot of them were really told by Loki, and of course, as usual, he has this strange way of sending messages, but nonetheless he did warn the Avengers of the War of Realms, and at the end result of what was an attack for the most part, he did leave them better equipped after his mega celestial attack. But in addition to that, he's also warned Doctor Strange, he's warned Wolverine, he's been working with Thor, and to once again, his tactics are funny, because Thor's like he needs to get into heaven, and Loki's like, you know what, I got a plan, I'm gonna kill you, right? And Thor's like, Loki? And Loki's like, did you die though? And more or less at the time Thor did. But last and not least, Loki also sacrificing himself to send the message to Freya and the others about Thor being trapped on Jotunheim and that Thor needs to return to Midgard to win this war. But through it all, Loki was that common factor early on who initially seemed to be working with Malekith, but all the while working on his own agenda, to which part of that included supplanting Malekith's plans. But at this point, with the worldwide invasion that's going on, and in the beginning we get a look at New York, but eventually we come to find that it's a global attack. And in many cases, wherever the heroes are, they kind of just jump from what they're doing and just get in the fight. But what I like about how this is done is like when the Punisher's finna get stabbed in the back by a dark elf, Wolverine creeps up and stabs the dark elf in the back, and the Punisher's just like, I thought you were dead, which is one of those comments that Wolverine is going to be hearing for a while, mainly because since his death and then the hunt for Wolverine and then the return of Wolverine, it isn't really till the War of Realms to where he's jumped out to the forefront, and much more so than we first seen him return in Infinity Wars, back at the launch of Marvel Legacy. But now that the War of Realms is going on and everybody's coming out the woodwork, we're getting to see that there's quite a few people who are like, well, I didn't know, or they don't know nothing about Hulk Marines, Return of Wolverine, Hunt for Wolverine, or none of that. And I like when he sees people that he hasn't seen for a while, they just address that head on. And so now, addition to your physical attack, you also have Dario Agger, who's using his resources with Roxxon Corp, and he's attacking satellites, crashing networks so that the heroes will be separated from one another. And with the amount of heroes that are here without their comms, he's separating them across the globe and essentially making them smaller groups to attack, because it's not like they're just one huge allegiance fighting against Malekith and his forces, but instead it's like you're just allied with whoever's around as far as the eye can see. And so at this point, also at the Sanctum Sanctorum, while Doctor Strange is out fighting with the others, he set up a safe room that'll hold like a couple million people in order to keep the pedestrians out of harm's way. And this is also where Jane Foster was helping out, just making sure the bystanders get off the street and out of harm's way. But of course she isn't there for long, because she feels like she could be more helpful actually in the battle, even though she's no longer Thor at this current time. And I can't help but thinking, just because of the way Mighty Thor played out, and really what that series series not only continuing but also delivering a lot of the build up for the War of Realms, but I feel like in a way, and I could be way off, but I feel like in a way that it's giving us this setup for a very Game of Thrones like ending to how we're expecting Thor to finish it, but in the end it's really gonna come down to Jane Foster. I just kinda got that feeling, and it's probably just me between this past week being the end of the world over and over again, between Avengers Endgame, Game of Thrones, I just bought and beat Mortal Kombat 11, and we also got the War of Realms, and don't forget Doomsday Clock, which isn't necessarily this week, but it's like you and I are in a whirlwind of multi-year story payoffs happening now. It is intense. But the thing is, where all this starts to shift when Jane Foster's trying to help out and Freya's talking to her kind of like, what are you doing? Okay, wait, like, what are you doing? Give me the sword, go home, stop it. But when this happens, albeit they hear the war horn of Asgard, and it is Odin, bandaged up and ready to go. And at this state, Odin's probably like at your 40%, if that. But that's one of the things with Odin, like if he still have life left in him, he's going to fight. But the catch that we've come to with Odin in the War of Realms is like the fight has caught him in an hour where not only is he dealing with insomnia, which is critical for Odin because he needs to sleep to recharge the Odin force, but it has him battling hard on a low battery, if you will, which is very likely to cost him his life. But what's interesting and I think overlooked by many is that Valkyrie, who at this point has returned with Odin, she pulls Jane Foster away from the fight, who she kind of didn't recognize because the hair, because since Jane's resurrection, she's cured from cancer, her hair's growing back and is not blonde. But in Valkyrie's attempt to pull Jane away from the fight and just drop her off of the rooftop, Jane actually comes across and stops Malekith's interference spell, which was keeping Doctor Strange from getting the wounded off the battlefield, which was also a crucial move in the case of getting Odin out of there, with Odin having done a critical amount of damage in a short amount of time, but still, in his condition, he's like barely holding on for life. And so they end up taking him to the North Pole, to the Avengers Mountain, which is like your most recent headquarters of the Avengers, but it's here that Doctor Strange and everyone else pretty much regroup so they can figure out what's the next step. But it's also here that Odin lets them know that Malekith has been getting around using the Black Bifrost, much how Malekith has attacked their magic transport almost immediately after Dario Agger cut off their comms and their teleportation devices. But at this point, with them needing to go to Svartalfheim, the land of the Dark Elves, to stop Malekith from using the Black Bifrost, but also they need to go to Jotunheim to get Thor, Freya is not able to use her traditional means of using the Bifrost, which is broken, and with Heimdal not even be able to see at the moment, he's unable to direct them accordingly. And this is where Daredevil volunteers to go with Freya, or better yet go to Asgard for Freya and navigate the Bifrost. But this puts them in 3 teams, one going to Svartalfheim to go stop the Black Bifrost, but that's only possible if they first get a group to Asgard to use what's left of the Bifrost to get that team there, and also for them to get a group to Jotunheim to bring Thor back to Midgard, which is a lot of people going off Earth and stretching thin the heroes who are already at impossible odds. And at this point in time, you still have your handful of heroes, like your Weapon H, Captain Britain, Captain Marvel, Bucky Barnes, but there were also those who probably should have, who were very much wounded and still fighting, attempting to fight off the siege and as a result lost their lives, like Valkyrie, who was impaled by Malekith and decapitated before the reinforcements could even show up. But as the heroes depart from Avengers Mountain, they take with them weapons that are needed, much of which have come from Asgard, to which after the course of recent events, they've more or less been added to the Avengers armory, with some relics just being better safeguarded here for the time being. But moving out as far as the first phase of the plan, you have Daredevil, who's met with Heimdal, who initially gives Matt Murdock the speech of "I've been watching you from afar," and it doesn't come out right. But what Heimdal ends up doing is he shows Matt Murdock that once he's taken up his sword, Hofund, that he'll be imbued with the power of the Guardian of the Bifrost, which to be more specific is the Guardian of all the realms as far as the history of Hofund, but Heimdal doesn't get all into that, so we'll just go with it for now. But with doing so, this has to be one of my favorite moments within the War of Realms. Definitely one of my top favorite moments, because even with Heimdal warning Matt Murdock of the consequences and doing a much better job than Thor, because you know Thor would be like, your bodies will crumble as your minds collapsed into madness. But no, it's crazy because having Daredevil with the power of Heimdal and expanding the power that he has already, which is more like a sonar detection, and expanding that throughout the 10 realms, like this concept, it truly just blows my mind, because I'd imagine that not only can he see in a sense where Heimdal could have before, but I would even argue that he has a more in-depth perception than Heimdal has ever had with this power. And it's just a perfect scenario, a perfect setup, a brilliant way to use Daredevil within the War of Realms. But with Murdoch in position, they're able to use Ghost Rider, Punisher, Freya, Blade, She-Hulk, and send them to Svartalfheim, the home of the Dark Elves, in order to cut off Malekith from having access to the Black Bifrost. And so on the other hand, in Jotunheim, you also got Cap, Iron Fist, Spider-Man, Luke Cage, and Wolverine, to whom they hear wailing in the distance up on the mountain range. But when they approach the mountain range, it's actually a pile of dead frost giants. And Logan tells them to take it easy approaching Thor because he's in his berserker rage at the moment. And albeit your berserker rage, your warrior's madness, at their core they're essentially your same concept. And I got a link in the description to tell you a bit more about the warrior's madness and how exactly that works with Thor throughout the history of Marvel Comics and the bloodlust and all that. But to pretty much summarize it, he's really just in this place where he wants to destroy everything in his path. And just seeing him here looks so crazy because like his arm is gone again. And I don't think a number of these guys like Spider-Man like haven't seen Thor in this mode as of yet, but they gonna learn today. But what throws a monkey wrench in all of this, back on Asgard at the Bifrost, Malekith's army used the Black Bifrost again and they attack Asgard. And Daredevil doesn't notice this until literally like the last second. And it's like you can just imagine like he's brand new to this. Like seeing all the realms at one time is a lot of information to process. But what's even crazier is that the Dark Elves succeed at this attack and destroy what's left of the Bifrost, which as a result leaves everyone who's in the land of the Dark Elves on their own. And it puts them in a tough spot because they're there to destroy the Dark Bifrost, but now the Dark Bifrost is their only way back. And for the heroes who went to go get Thor out of Jotunheim, they're stuck as well because they need a resolve on either end so that they're not trapped in Jotunheim and they don't freeze to death. But that'll do it for this one, guys. At this point, it seems like the Black Bifrost is their only hope because at this point, the Dark Elves are just taking the guard out of Asgard and there's just nothing left. Not much left, you know. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down below. Marvel Legacy has been giving some crazy upgrades to a lot of these heroes, and I gotta say Daredevil with the power of Heimdal has definitely been one of my favorites. And albeit seeming like he's met his end, I don't believe that's what it's come to, a little too quick for that, but I am eager to see more of what will come from that. But let me know you guys' thoughts below, and we'll do it again in the next one. Alright, later.